and welcome to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Soraya, I'm a mother of two, and in today's video I'm going to share with you all my tips to travel alone with two very young children, a baby and a toddler, with everyone reaching the final destination, still alive, still in one piece, and relatively unscarred. I have traveled alone with my children from very early on. I think the first time I traveled with my first newborn baby was when she was only 6 weeks old. So I am now a veteran mom traveler and I'm going to share with you all the lessons I've learned along the way. And of course, it's much easier to travel with a newborn than it is to travel with a child who is 6 months plus and with a toddler. So if you are wanting to go on a holiday and you don't know when is the best time to travel with your child, when your child is still very small, is the best time to travel. The reason is they will probably breastfeed the whole time and sleep in your arms the whole time. They will be quiet, they will be fine. Like the only moment they might cry is during takeoff and landing if their ears hurt. But other than that, it's going to go relatively smoothly. You can, they're still pretty light at this age. So if you have to carry them around for extended periods of time, that's okay. So that's the best age to travel, is when they are still fairly small. So planning your trip. There are a couple of very important rules when planning your trip. The first thing, travel by day. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, let me travel by night because my child will be tired and they will just sleep the whole way. I'm not saying it's not true for anyone. Maybe it's true for some. Maybe your child is an extraordinarily good sleeper and they will sleep throughout your trip. But in my experience, it's not the case. I have two children. One is a very good sleeper. One is much more energetic and she doesn't need as much sleep. It doesn't matter, both of them will not sleep on the plane. So the best thing is to travel during the day and take what you need to entertain them during the flight. A lot less stressful, they won't be as tired, you won't have a crying child during the entire journey. Second thing is, if you can, avoid connecting flights. The first thing is, obviously when you're traveling alone with two very young children or one very young child, or I don't know how many kids you got, if you're traveling alone with your children, you want the trip to be as short and as easy as possible. If there are direct flights, even if sometimes they're a bit more expensive, as long as it's affordable, I would say it's worth the extra money if you can. One other thing is that your stroller, you are allowed to keep it until you board the plane of your first flight. But most companies, some do, but most companies will not return your stroller back to you once you get to that connecting airport. So you will only get your stroller back once you reach your final destination. Some airports will provide strollers for passengers to use within the terminals, within the boarding area, but not all of them do. If you don't have a choice, if you have to take a connecting flight, that's okay, that's fine. But please make sure that there is at least an hour and 45 minutes between your first and your second flight. Ideally 2 hours. And the reason is, with children, alone, with your carry-on, carrying your baby, you might have a stroller, you might not. It doesn't matter. You will move slower, okay? You will move slower than you do when you're on your own. If your first flight has even the slightest delay, you will become so stressed. It's so hard to move around. It's very often the case that you have to go through another security check before boarding your second flight. So once again, your bags will be checked. You will have to take out all the liquids from your bags. You will be carrying your crying baby because they're tired and fed up already at this point. You will be hungry probably. So make sure you plan for enough time. So I would really recommend at least an hour and 45 minutes, preferably 2 hours between both flights. Last thing, you will need to check all of the new requirements and guidelines related to COVID-19. So you need to make sure that you are allowed to go into your destination country, obviously, but you also need to check, is there a 14 days quarantine in place in either side, like when you go there and when you come back, and how does that affect your trip? You will need to check what are your airline requirements when it comes to boarding the plane. Also make sure that you have surgical masks with you. So in my case, my airline company, the one that I used to travel to France, They require surgical masks, disposable masks, so they won't accept the reusable fabric masks that you can find. So make sure you check what the requirements are for the airline company that you are using, and make sure you bring what's necessary. Last thing that you can do way ahead of your trip, and I usually start doing this about 10 days before my trip, is that I create a list on my phone where I start writing down all the stuff I might forget and all the things that the children need. Literally everything, every time I use something and I'm thinking, I have to make sure I don't forget that when I travel, I write it down on the list. And this becomes very, very handy when you're packing and you have so many things to think about, especially if you've got more than one child, but even with just one. And I guarantee you that the first time you travel with your child, it is very likely that you will forget stuff. So make sure you write everything down on that list, and it's so helpful. The day before your trip, packing. Okay, so you've got your tickets, you're ready to go, you need to start packing your bags. Couple of things to keep in mind. The first thing is, maybe you will have somebody to accompany you to the airport and who will be kind enough to take you all the way to check-in. If that's possible, that's great. That is so helpful, and it removes a huge amount of stress if you can have somebody with you all the way until check-in. But even if you do, after that you're on your own, including once you exit the plane at your final destination and you have to go through border control and then you have to go through the baggage claim area on your own. You're gonna have to, sort out your child, carry your child or push the stroller and move around with your luggage until you exit the baggage claim area, at which point you may have somebody waiting for you on the other side who is ready to help. But there will be moments when you will have all of your luggage with you, your stroller, your child, and you will have to move everything around on your own. So keep this in mind. So there's a couple of things that I do. The first thing is that I make sure that my changing bag is a backpack. It makes a world of difference when you can carry it on your back and the weight is evenly distributed, because you will see that your changing bag is massive. And I am also making a video on what I pack in my changing bag to travel with my baby and with my toddler. So, stay tuned for that. But yeah, so your changing bag will be massive and heavy and it will be so hard to carry around. So if it's one of those bags that you hold on one shoulder, it's going to be so hard to balance. You have to walk so far in the airport carrying it. So backpack if you can. And then in terms of the luggage, if you can, please travel with only one luggage that you will be checking in. Only one, because once you get to that final destination and you have your stroller and you have to push your stroller, carry your backpack, or maybe your backpack is on the stroller but you're still pushing that weight around anyway, and then you have to drag your luggage, it is really helpful if you only have one. If you've got two luggage, you don't even have enough hands to move around with your luggages and with your stroller. If you are traveling with a child who is still small enough to be in a baby carrier, take one with you. I always find it really helpful to have a baby carrier with me. That way I can just have my baby in there and I have my hands free to carry my carry-ons, take stuff in and out of the bag when I need to, move around, give my passport, check my boarding pass. So it's helpful if your baby is still small enough to hold into one. Pack all your bags, all of them, including your carry-ons, the changing bags, your handbag, your purse, everything, your passport, your boarding, everything. Pack everything the day before. The day before you travel, you will check how long it will take you to get to the airport, whether you're going there by train or you're going there with an Uber or with your car or your husband's car or whatever, and then set an alarm on your phone to 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and 5 minutes before the time you will actually leave. It's so helpful so that you don't leave late. And I would highly recommend planning getting to the airport 2 hours before your flight, no matter where you're going. Even if it's a short haul flight, it doesn't matter. It really helps if you can be there 2 hours ahead of time, because again, like I said before, everything takes more time when you have children. Last thing to do the day before you travel, and I know this will sound super silly, but I promise you it makes a world of difference, is to clean and tidy up your house. On the morning of traveling, you will be stressed, you will have a million things to do and to think about, and the last thing you want to do is to be thinking about doing the dishes and taking the bins out. And it's so uncomfortable to come back to a house that's not clean and that's messy and to dirty dishes, and I mean, depending on how long you leave, the bins might start to smell. So it is best if you can clean and tidy up your house the day before. Okay, it's now the day of traveling. Take a deep breath. It's okay. Like I always say, minutes have to keep going. Time has to keep passing. You will get to the end of today. You will get to your final destination one step at a time. All right, let's get started. So at that point, you'll be going through the list that you've made on your phone to make sure you have not forgotten anything. You will be booking your Uber or your taxi if that's what you're using to get to the airport. You will be making sure that you've got your boarding passes ready if you've checked in online, and your passports ready, and or any paperwork that you might need for traveling. You will be making sure that you've got all those disposable surgical masks in your handbag ready to use, and you will take a nice fulfilling breakfast, something that your children have had before and you know will not upset their stomach. Believe me, it's important. The one thing that I always do right before I leave, the last thing I do before I leave, is change my baby's diaper. Because I want, it's so annoying to have to change a baby's diaper, on the go. Airports are not always so clean. So you want to change that baby's diaper right before you leave. You may have to change it again, but at least, you start the trip with a fresh, clean, dry diaper. Now, you're finally at the airport, you're ready to check in, and hopefully if somebody is there with you to help you, that is really helpful and that will take a lot of stress off of your shoulder. But if not, I have done this many times before where I've had to take an Uber on my own all the way to the airport and then do the checking on my own. You will then have to head to security, and I strongly advise heading to security straight after checking in. Don't waste any time, because again, it will take you some time to go through security. There may be a line there, and even when there isn't a line, it always takes more time when you have children than it does when you don't, because they have to check the stroller, they have to check the bag, they have to check all the baby food, so it takes a while. So I would head to security straight away. Okay, once you're at security, you will have to put all your jackets in a tray, your big massive changing bag in a different tray, and then you will have to take out any baby food and liquids that you may have in your bag. So that includes bottles, that includes fruit pouches or purees that you may have, that includes sippy cups with water, that includes nappy rash cream. So any liquids that you may have needs to come out, and that's why I like to always keep all of my liquids and baby foods and stuff in Ziploc bags, so that it's so easy and quick to take out when I get to security. When you're traveling with children, you're allowed to exceed the 100 milliliters limit, so you're allowed to travel with a bottle of 210 milliliters or whatever you want. I know that when I've made long haul flights, I have traveled with 3 bottles of 240 milliliters each. So there's no limit on how much liquids you can take, but everything is going to be checked. So take everything out, put it in a different tray. Before you take your baby out of his stroller or her stroller, you need to ask the security officer whether you are okay to go through the metal detector with your shoes, or if you need to remove your shoes. Sometimes, like some types of shoes, they will require you to remove them and to put them through the x-ray machine. And it's much easier to remove your shoes when your baby is still in their stroller. So check whether you need to do that or not before you take baby out of the stroller. Once you're good to go and you're all ready to go through the metal detector, you can take your baby out of the stroller, and a security officer is going to come and take your stroller to the other side. Toddlers who are old enough to walk through the metal detectors on their own will be going through it, just walking through it on their own. So for my daughter, after she turned 3, she was fine with going through the metal detector on her own and waiting for me on the other side. But before that, even when she already knew how to walk, but she was still a little bit worried and scared, she was allowed to go with me. And obviously your baby, if you have a baby, you'll be carrying them in your hands. So you go through the detector, hopefully everything is fine. And on the other side, you will see that your jackets and your changing bag will be waiting for you there, but the tray that has all the baby food and creams and liquids will have been selected for a manual check. So you will have to go around, and at this point the security officer who takes your tray will ask you if that's all right to check your baby food. And what they do is that they will put every single item through a machine that checks that it's okay. I don't know exactly how this machine works or what they're looking for in that machine, but it takes a little while, especially if you're traveling on a long haul flight and you've got a ton of different items and baby food, like a ton of, fruit pouches and purees, and you have 3 bottles with you. So it can take some time. So that's why it's really important to make sure you go to the airport long enough in advance and that you go to security straight away when you get to the airport. In 3 years of traveling with young children, it has never happened to me to have one of my baby food items not cleared and that they kept any of my baby food. Even sometimes I've traveled with really strange things, like my daughter is allergic to milk, so I've traveled with bottles of oat milk, and it's never happened to me that they take anything away from me. Once everything is returned with you, that's it. You're done with the most stressful part. You can put everything back in your backpack, put it on your bag, go with your little stroller into the boarding area. I will always make sure that I change my baby's diaper in the boarding area. Inside the airplane, most airplanes have at least one changing station in the toilets. They don't always have it in both toilets. There's a toilet at the at the front of the plane and a toilet at the back of the plane. So they don't always have the changing table in both toilets, but there's always at least one. I've used it before, but it's extremely, the toilet in the airplane is extremely narrow. This changing table is tiny. If your baby is anything more than a newborn, they will not hold on that tiny changing table laying down, and changing a poopy diaper with a baby who has to sit is very difficult. So hopefully you won't have to do this. If it's a long haul flight, you may not be able to escape it, but if you can, try to change your baby's diaper in the boarding area to try and avoid having to change your baby inside the plane. It saves you a bit of stress. And I also always go to the toilet myself in the boarding area, and I know you may be like, oh, why are you sharing this with us? The reason is, once again, the toilet in the airplanes are extremely narrow and you may not be able to get in there with your children. So if you have to go when you're on the airplane, you can usually ask a steward to hold your baby for you while you go to the toilet. But that may be stressful. Your baby may start crying when they're being held by a stranger. It's some stress that I like to avoid if I can. What I do is that when I'm in the boarding area, I will go with my stroller and my toddler and my baby into the toilets for handicaps, because these are usually large enough that I can walk into them with my stroller and my carry-on and everything and just do what I need to do with my children safe and close to me. Again, make sure you give yourself plenty of time to walk to your gate. In some airports, it may take 15 minutes to walk from the security checkpoint to your actual gate. So make sure you check that ahead of time and give yourself plenty of time to get there. Now, when boarding the plane, a lot of airline companies will give priority to parents with infants and young children, but they may not always say it. When the steward is announcing that it's time to board your flight, they will usually call first class and business class first, or priority tickets or whatever. And don't be shy at that point to go to them and ask if you can board the plane now. And most of the time they will say yes. So I usually like to keep with me a couple of toys and snacks and then put the changing bag up in the compartment above my head. But one thing to keep in mind is that if your child uses a smoothie or is bottle feeding, it's a good idea to take them out and keep them with you during takeoff. And I will explain why in a little bit. And again, if you want to see what snacks and toys I take with me to entertain my children on the plane, I have made a whole video on that subject and I will link it somewhere in the description below. Now, during takeoff and landing, some children may feel pain in their ears due to pressure inside the aircraft. The pressure is changing as we take off and then as we go back down and land, and so this may cause some pain, especially if your child has a cold or has just had a cold. Then it's very likely that it will hurt because their sinuses are much more sensitive and they might feel a lot more pain. So there's a couple of ways that you can try and help your child. If your baby is still breastfeeding, that's actually the best, because then just put them on your boob and they will breastfeed, and the sucking motion will help with the ear pain. And actually, when my babies were small enough to still breastfeed, I would actually put them on my boobs straight away before we even start the takeoff, as a preventative measure, and it really helps. If they're not breastfeeding, you can also, it works just as well with a bottle, and it works also really well with a Soothie. So, you know, try one of these three for very young children. It's really helpful. The sucking motion really helps. If your child is old enough, you can try and see if they want some gum, because the chewing motion helps as well. So chewing a gum really helps. If they're not old enough for that, then maybe some snacks. Also, you can ask your child to do some movements with their jaws like this. And another thing that they can do is hold their nose closed and then blow, pretend like they're going to blow. And sometimes it helps to pop that pressure in the ears, and it makes them feel better. Once we're in the air, it gets better. So it just lasts like maybe 15-20 minutes while the pressure adjusts in the aircraft, and then it gets better. Once you get off the plane, some airline companies will give you your stroller back straight away, just when you walk out of the plane, and that is honestly the best. But honestly, I've traveled with many airline companies, and most companies don't do that. So you will have to carry your changing bag, your purse, and your baby, and maybe hold your toddler's hand as well, all the way, go through security, and then go to the baggage claim area. And usually your stroller will be waiting there in the oversized luggage area. So that's an area where you will find all the oversized and weirdly shaped baggage, and so that's where your stroller will be waiting for you. And I would usually recommend getting, if you can, get your stroller first, put your child in the stroller, and then go back to get your luggage, so that you can push your stroller with one hand and hold your luggage with the other. And what I do when I'm traveling with my baby and my toddler is that my baby is in the stroller, and I ask my toddler to hold the handle of the luggage, so that instead of holding my hand, because I can't hold her hand and also push the luggage as well, so I ask her to hold the handle so that she stays close to me and safe. And then we can finally exit the luggage claim area, and usually my mom or someone from our family is waiting for us on the other side. And that's it. All there is to do left is exit the airport, and you've done it. You're on the other side, you're in one piece, so are your children, and actually I'm sure it went better than you expected. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Have a lovely day.